Hey guys, in this video I wanted to talk about my Les Paul Custom. It's a 1983 and it has a real interesting story, I think, behind it, especially my relationship with this guitar. I've known this particular Les Paul for a long time. So I want to tell the little story about my history with it. So going back to when I was a kid, the Les Paul was easily the most sought after guitar for me and my friends and just anybody in that age group. I think we all really, we kind of idolized Jimmy Page and Neil Schon and then eventually Randy Rhoads and all these guys who were kind of known for playing Les Pauls and had this great tone, killer sustain and everything. But they were kind of expensive. They're like really expensive now, but back then there weren't even any cheaper options. There was just basically Les Paul standard, deluxe, and custom, and then maybe a few tiny other variants. But there were no cheap Les Pauls back then, or even remotely affordable ones for somebody like me who just didn't really have any money. But fast forward to a few years down the line, and when I started getting a little bit better gear and having a little bit more money, not much, but some way to acquire some money, after school jobs and things like that, I happened to go into a music store in Macon, Georgia, which was about 30 miles, maybe a little bit less, probably about 30 miles from where I grew up and was still living at the time. And this guitar was hanging on the wall. It was, at that time, this was probably 1984 or 85 maybe. So it was still fairly new, this guitar. But the price was pretty low on it, as I remember, maybe $500 or something like that. And so I thought, there's got to be a way I can get that money. So I saw it, and then I went away from the store and thought about it a little bit and came back. I think it was the same day. I came back a little later, and my cousin, who was my musical mentor and like a big brother to me, my cousin Johnny was in there buying the guitar. He had it on the counter and just peeling off those, bills for it. And my heart both sank and I was a little glad at the same time because I was a little envious because I really wanted it, even if it was going to be hard to acquire it. But Johnny was not only like a big brother to me, and not only was he my mentor and everything, but he lived right down the road from me, and he was really generous. And so right away, he saw me in there looking at it, and I told him, I was like, gosh, I just looked at this guitar. And he was like, well, look at it this way. It's yours too now, and you're going to get to play it all you want because, you can always borrow it. And he was just super generous that way. And then to add to that, I started playing in his band, his bar band, like just very soon right after that. And I took this guitar with me on every gig and played all the ballads with it because it just had the great singing sustain for solos. I played Purple Rain on this guitar over and over and over again. And many others. So anyway, the guitar was really important to me. It was like I could not really acquire my own Les Paul very easily. I just didn't have the money. But I always wanted it, and I told Johnny if he ever sold it, I'd like to have it. But then I ended up moving to Los Angeles. I started getting hired transcribing and working for publishers like Hal Leonard Corporation and Cherry Lane and all these guys, guitar magazines and all that. So I moved out to Los Angeles, and while I was out there, Johnny we just didn't talk about it, I guess, and on a whim, Johnny sold it to somebody who just happened to come by his house, a friend of his that made an offer on it. And of course, when I found out, I was kind of shocked. I was like, oh no, I really wanted it, and I should have just really pressed that on him more. But anyway, as fate would have it, that friend of his became a really good friend of mine, and he knew I still loved this guitar and would always want it. But he ended up moving to Los Angeles right after I moved back to Georgia. So we were, again, the guitar and I were separated by 2,200 miles or whatever that is, as the crow flies. But But Brian always said, "I'll sell the guitar back to you if you really want it." But one of the most important things in this story for me is that my cousin Johnny passed away unexpectedly in '93, early 1993, and right after Brian had moved out to LA with this guitar. The importance of the guitar to me, it just grew like many times over because it was this mutual kind of a touchstone with my memories of my cousin. So Brian still always said, I'll, if I ever want to get rid of it, I'll sell it to you. I'll let you know first. And as it turns out, he was good to his word. About 22 years later, he called me up one day and said, "Do you want it?" And of course I did. And thankfully by then, not only the value of the guitar had gone way up, but at least I did have the money for it. So that was a blessing, and it was an incredible blessing to get this guitar back. It meant so much to me, and it will always be a really special instrument to me. So that's a really personal reason why I love this guitar. But I also want to talk a little bit about the things about it that just make it a great guitar. So first off, I would say that most everything about this guitar is the sort of standard array of specifications for a Les Paul custom of this particular era, sort of a Norland era Les Paul, but not early Norland. So it has a relatively thinner sort of taper to the neck on the end towards the headstock, but it gets a little bit bigger as it goes up to the body, but it's still, to me, a pretty thin contour for a Les Paul, so it kind of has this nice sort of fast sort of feel to it. But the width is this sort of normal Gibson width. So it feels kind of wide, flat, and somewhat thin. So at the time this guitar was made, I would say that was probably a pretty popular sort of way to make a neck, because it felt a little more kind of hot rodded that way. The ebony fretboard kind of gives it a little more brightness than not as warm as my Les Paul Standard, but it's really a nice alternate Les Paul sound to me. It's got a lot of clarity. So sometimes for me, I think of the Les Paul Standard as being sort of more the blues kind of Les Paul sound, a little warmer, woodier. But this has more clarity, so to me that works great both for when you need a cleaner sound out of the Les Paul, or if you're going to gain it up a lot and have more of a hard rock or metal type sound, because that clarity, that real even sound and that brightness on the high end seems to kind of slice through and stay clear. So that's, to me, one of the good reasons to have a Les Paul custom is that clarity. And kind of an interesting thing on these Les Pauls was this sort of fold-out built-in peg winders on the tuners. That's the only thing I think that's been really significant replacement that's been made on this guitar, is the tuning machines. I replaced them back when my cousin Johnny still owned this guitar in 1988 or 87. I think it was 88. So the first set of them wore out pretty fast, but this is the second set that's still on here. They're exactly the same ones. They still have the Gibson print on the back or engraving, and they still work well. It's just amazing. The first set didn't hold up very well at all, but this set has been really good. So that goes all the way back to 1988 or so. They're still good. Don't think it has not been refretted, but I think somewhere along the line somebody had it maybe leveled. The frets seem to have been maybe dressed at some point, probably a long time ago. They're pretty low, so that's both good and bad. It can be good for making it feel fast. It's also good for playing chords and stuff, but it's a little bit, it'll kind of wear you out playing a lot of bending on it. But Les Paul Customs are kind of known for those smaller frets. I will probably have bigger frets put in it when I finally do break down and have it refretted. But all the potentiometers are the original ones. It has that strange little Faraday cage inside where all the controls are in a little kind of, I guess, aluminum box to kind of shield things. I'm not really sure that helps all that much, but it's in there. It does cause a little bit more of a pain in the butt when you need to get in there and see if the soldering is okay and everything. These are the original Tim Shaw humbuckers. They sound great. They can squeal a little bit when you get real loud and use a lot of gain or anything, or if you got a Marshall Plexi blasting right next to or something, it can feed back pretty easily. But it's manageable, and the tone of these pickups is so good that I couldn't bear to change them out. Let's see, and I did actually have to put a new little nipple thing on the switch because somehow the original one got lost. But other than that, this thing is pretty well stock, and it's turned a really interesting smoker's teeth shade of yellow over the years, as they all do. It was originally, I guess, what they call Polaris or Arctic white, probably. But yeah, and you can see some of the white in places where where it's worn a little more, but it's quite yellowed now over time. But I think they kind of look cooler once they get this strange yellowy color to them. But anyway, that's pretty much it about the guitar. It's a really fantastic instrument. So I would say that if you're interested in Les Pauls, this is actually kind of an interesting era to me. Is these kind of early '80s when they kind of seemed to upgrade the construction a little bit. I don't think they did so many of the pancake bodies anymore. Like they did in the '70s. It's not as heavy. I think it may be a little bit weight relieved. I think this might be one of the first ones where they actually cored the mahogany a little bit. But it's a really great example of a Les Paul custom, and you can get these for a fairly reasonable price. Probably not too much different. If it's in good shape like this one, I think you could probably get one for close to what you could buy a new Les Paul custom for. Maybe a little more if it's in real clean condition. But anyway, certainly worth looking at, and I just really love this guitar, the history I've had with it, and hopefully I'll have many, many more years of interesting and fun history with it. So thanks for watching this real personal video. It's kind of weird talking to a camera, so I'm really thinking about if there's even one person out here who thought that was an interesting story. I'm trying to think about what it is to tell you that vulnerable story about my past and this guitar and my cousin Johnny. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed it, and if you'd like to see more videos, there's going to be lots of topics on this channel. Click like and subscribe, and I hope to see you soon.